welkom. Ik denk dat de meeste van ons Nederlands sprekend zijn. Of zijn er ook alleen Engels sprekenden onder ons? Nee. Just doing this, ich tue das kurz auf Deutsch sagen. Und ich komme gleich.
Ja, alles goed.
Ik ga zo meteen kort in het Duits zeggen welkom heten, want zij is Duits sprekend als Turks-Duits en dan is de voertaal het Engels. Dus dat even over de procedurele kanten. Ik geloof niet dat ik mezelf heb voorgesteld. Mijn naam is René Rumkens. My name is René Rumkens.
I understand the Dutch a little bit because I understand German.
That's true.
It's so
There's more. Die zien sich ähnlich aus Englisch und Holländisch, das ist waar. Mijn naam is René Rumkens. Het is mijn eer en plezier om jullie welkom te heten als directeur van Atria. En we zijn ongelooflijk trots, ongelooflijk stolz dat Seyran Ateş naar Amsterdam is willen komen. Want het hoeft geen betoog voor degenen die hier aanwezig zijn. Dat een hele onderneming is, in een heleboel opzichten, maar wel een onderneming die de moeite meer dan waard is. Want de ideeën van Seyran, die behoeven een dialoog en niet alleen maar gevecht. En daar zo meteen nog meer over. Een praktische mededeling die Seyran ook al weet. De interviewer is helaas door ziekte uitgevallen. Dat vinden we echt heel erg spijtig. Seyran Zingis is een expert op dit terrein, met name vanuit de religieuze hoek. Aber wir sind sehr froh, dass wir eine Stand-in gefunden haben. Astrid Elburg. Astrid ist ein Mitglied unserer Advisory Board auf Atria. Aber wichtiger in diesem Kontext ist, dass Astrid eine Expertin ist und ich sage das kurz nun auf Englisch, Seyran, in bridging the dialogue between different cultures. En Astrid ist Expertin insbesondere, wenn sich Positionen sich gegenüber einander stellen und unversöhnlich sind, dann ist Astrid aus ihrer Erfahrung diejenige, die sagt, wie können wir den Dialog hier wieder reinkriegen. Und deshalb sind wir sehr froh, dass Astrid unser Stand-in heute Morgen ist. Sie ist keine Expertin in die islamische Religion, aber sehr, wie ich soeben sagte, sehr kundig, wenn es geht wie kann man einen Dialog zwischen Partien, die sich einander eigentlich nicht verstehen wollen oder können vielleicht. Astrid wird auf Englisch auch den Dialog führen. Very briefly, an introduction of Seyran Ateş for those who don't know her. Seyran is a human rights activist for many, many years. She's Turkish-German of origin, of Kurdish descent, which is important in a Turkish political context, certainly nowadays. But it is important that Seyran has had her trajectory in human rights law and particularly defending women's human rights. And in that context she turned to Islam, given that there is a lot to be said about women's human rights within Islam. An important book of Seyran is auf Deutsch, Islam braucht eine sexuelle Revolution, which was a revolutionary, or is, I should say, a revolutionary book still, dating back to 2009, but hasn't lost any of its actual relevance. And she addresses there the position of women in Islam globally, which I think is also very important, given the work that Atria does in the context of the Commission on the Status of Women, which meets annually in New York. And it's really inspiring to see that particularly Muslim women across the world really gather there too and make a different voice heard when it comes to their position, and particularly also the sexual rights of women. I think it will be part of the conversation that Seyran is an advocate for a Muslim feminist movement. And we know that her mission is, and her statements are not given the liberal interpretation, if I may summarize it like that, of Islam that Seyran stands for, it makes, to a certain extent, sense that not everybody likes that position. But it is a really sad reality also that is met with threats that force Seyran to travel with permanent safety guards. And I think that is why Atria is really very, very proud and happy, if I might put it that way, to have you, because one of the things we really want to encourage is a conversation across differences in opinion. And I think, as I said, Astrid will be an excellent guide to do the conversation. And finally, Zehra Sariaslan, our Atria colleague sitting in the front row, will be the moderator for the discussion afterwards. One final remark, you all know that Seyran Ateş will also give a public lecture tonight in the Nieuwe. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Zehra Sariaslan and I'm a policy advisor at Atria, and today I'll be moderating this event. Thank you for coming and thank you guys for joining this event as well. So before we start, feel free to tweet about this event. You can use the hashtag FLAP without a hyphen, a streepje. And also don't forget to mention Seyran Ateş and Atria News. And without further ado, Astrid and start the interview.
Ben ik verstaanbaar? Ja.
Misschien kun je die andere gebruiken daar.
Oh. Nog veel. Pas beter bij mij.
It's for me.
It's for you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I have a question to you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility for Q&A after my interview?
Yes,
Yeah?
after
Okay.
the interview there will be a Q&A session.
Okay. Thank you very much. I had to be very fast to do the preparation for this interview. So I thought I'm going to ask you some personal questions and then we're going to look at the ideological issues. But since I believe a name is a calling, and I was rehearsing on your name, I would like you to pronounce your name because I like to pronounce people's names very well.
Seyran Ateş.
Seyran Ateş. Okay, thank you. For me, it's a great honor to do this interview and a fantastic opportunity to look you in the eyes. And I want to say, welcome to Amsterdam. I think it's not your first time.
It's not the first time.
And
it's not the first time.
It's not the first time.
Several times, yeah.
Okay. And I want you to know that other women of other new tribes of Europe are watching you too. So that's
Hi
why.
to everybody.
Okay. Before I start asking you questions, I want to make a statement for my part. I want to say that we have great thinkers in all times. But for me, I admire the thinkers the most who really take risks and do things as well. So that's why I feel very proud and honored to talk to you.
Thank you.
So let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You
How
okay?
are you? I'm fantastic, and I like to be here and and talk to this audience.
Yeah.
It's great to look in so many female eyes and talking about feminism.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you have been several times in this country, in our city. Do you feel welcome here?
I feel absolutely welcome in all over Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I feel welcome in many countries where people invite me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think I feel not only welcome, I feel home. This is a part of Europe, and I don't feel so strange here. I don't feel like a guest.
Okay.
This is also a very important point.
Yeah.
Maybe because of techniques, maybe because of traveling, but I think much more because of human being and human rights. We have the same problems in our communities, in our countries, all over Europe. So when I go to Oslo, for example, or Stockholm, what I did, and many times to Brussels, so I felt like I'm home and discussing the same things there, like in Germany. So I don't see that big difference, and therefore I feel very, very calm and very home.
So you're well connected and right in the middle of world issues.
This is it. This is it. The issue of human rights all over the world.
Yeah.
And women rights especially.
Of course, of course. Yeah, women rights are human rights. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Women everywhere.
How does it feel, or how is it to be a Muslim woman in the 21st century these days?
You know, when I grew up in a Muslim family, a Turkish mom and a Kurdish father, I never had this issue so in the front point. It was much more a traditional or cultural issue, and in my family people used to pray or go to mosque very silent and very calm, very relaxed. Nobody made a big business about that. And what I learned about my religion was it's something between you, in your heart, and God. And nobody has the right to manage or to take the right to tell you what is good for you or bad for you, as a good Muslim, bad Muslim, haram, halal. All these things were not in my life. So it was very relaxed to grow as a child in this issue. Not the traditional and patriarchy side. I ran away from home, by the way, when I was 17. But not because of religious issues, it was the kind of how gender equality was not practiced in our home. Later on, you can say there's also a religious part, a cultural and traditional part for that behavior and all these traditions. But when it comes to the religion, I was, as a human rights activist and a women rights activist, never in a situation that I have to defend my religion. But after 9/11, or I was never in a position to be so extroverted in this point, to tell and talk about my belief. It was much more about human rights and women rights. But after 9/11, we all, as guest worker children, as foreigners, as Muslims, we all were named much more as Muslims than as Turks or Kurds. Okay. So from this point, it felt a little bit different to be a Muslim in Europe. Much more people thought Islam is just violence and named us as terrorists, or it starts to be much. It starts to be a little bit of fight, struggling with this issue. Yes.
Okay, but what I can hear from your story is that you are a born activist.
I was born as an activist. I really was born as an activist. That's what we can say. Yes, my mom will agree that. My father too.
I recognize this because some people you recognize when you look them in the eye. You didn't become an activist. You were born like that.
Very natural.
Yes, as Nelson Mandela might say, if I have nothing to die for, I have nothing to live for.
This is it. This is absolutely. This is it. This is my life.
Okay.
And when you ask me, when you turn to, or when you start being a feminist, people ask me sometimes, I said, I cannot remember. I'm a feminist since I can talk or think. And I realize what's going on around my life. So I see boys were treated different than the girls. So it was a really, really early point in my life that I could say I was born as a feminist.
Okay, I was a feminist. Before we go to the big issues, I want to ask you, where do you go to when you feel hurt?
To God, as a believer, when this point I go inside and I start thinking about what's going on, and I go to people whom I can trust to talk seriously, to talk. But to believe in God really gives me a lot of power. So that's the reason why
That's where
I
you
can
find
go
your
forward.
strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Why I can continue.
Okay. So I assure you, you can trust us.
I can, I can trust you, but even when I can trust you, you know, the sad situation is what I'm sorry to call René, as the director, I want to say, René said, here's police protection now, and there are people from Germany, and I'm very thankful for this protection. This is since 2006. It's not just after we opened the mosque. And thank you for the Amsterdam police to support this protection. Yeah. And this is a sad situation. I have to be protected, to sit here and to talk to you. Okay. You know, it's I'm not doing something bad. I just fight for human rights and human rights, and this has to be protected. Yeah. Yeah. This is a sad situation. So let's jump to the big issues. Yes, you're protected for. Bring the red elephant in the room. Who's the elephant? So now we know we're protected and everyone is thanked. Yes. We can go to the big issues. Tell us about the situation at this time, at this moment, around your mosque today. You know, I decided first I have to say why I opened the mosque. Okay. I decided to open a mosque in 2009. It's really short introduction. I was a member of German Islam Conference from 2006 till 2009. And why they made this German Islam Conference? The German politicians, the German government decide that they need an integration summit and German Islam Conference to integrate all the people to Germany and also integrate Islam. So they separate these two summits, which was a good idea. And in these 4 years, I was sitting together with the classical, old school, conservative unions, men especially, and we discussed about Islam. And this man used to say always, why person who criticizes Islam, they are sitting here, why non-Muslim persons are sitting here. So the discussion was always that this man don't accept that I'm a Muslim. 4 years I had this experience that they always try to tell the German politicians what is the real and right and one and only Islam. It makes me really upset and a little bit aggressive, because I was really, really aggressive after a while. And said, you are not able to discuss with people who say, I'm Muslim, alhamdulillah, and you don't accept. Who are you to decide that I'm a Muslim or not? You are putting yourself in the position of God. And I was really hurt and go inside and realized we need a mosque. We need a place for secular, liberal Muslims. And especially the point of headscarf was a very, very important point for all this men. Yeah. They always discuss why we are not wearing a headscarf and sitting there and saying we are Muslims. This was something impossible for them. And yeah, finally I decided to open the mosque, and we worked 8 years on this idea. We opened the mosque last year. In our mosque, men and women are equal. We are equal leaders. I'm not the head of, and I just say what is going on and what is the real Islam. And we never say this is a good Islam and the others are practicing a bad Islam. We are looking for dialogue. We are doing dialogue. We are in a church. We have room in a church. We are in permanent dialogue with our Christian brothers and sisters and neighbors, and so you are quite inclusive. We are inclusive, absolutely. We are open for LGBT, and we are open for all kinds of believers or non-believers. So these 3 issues are practiced in our mosque: women's issue, LGBT, and freedom of religion, in a very, very clear and right way to believe or not to believe. So we have atheists coming to our mosque and discussing with us and be in dialogue about religion. We are not saying that somebody is a non-believer, like kafir, using all these names what people are using about non-believers. This word should be put in the criminal law, and it should be really forbidden.
So you made sure in your space that no one is left behind.
Absolutely, everyone is invited, and we are looking for dialogue and we are looking for understanding. That's the reason why we named our mosque, give the name Ibn Rushd-Goethe Mosque, because we are believing that we should know what we are believing in. Everybody should understand the Quran, everybody should be able to read it in his own language, and it's accepted to pray in your own language, because belief is something connected to your heart. You should do that. So after we opened the mosque, a lot of people start sending me death threats. You know, they want to kill me. They want to rape me. They want to do something bad to me. They will cut me and everything. They describe that very, very clearly.
And were that all groups, or from what part of the society were the threats?
You know, I was myself wondering what kind of people these are. They never use their real name. Some of them do. 3 days ago, I got a letter from the state that they find someone who has. Now he has to pay 300 euro to the state because he
because of you.
Me, because of me, because he made something wrong. So by criminal law, but most of them couldn't find them. It's not possible to find them. They are using technical possibilities, not to be found. And but what we can say is there are maybe some organizations behind that, countries. Because we got a kind of fatwa from Turkey, from Iran, and from Egypt. But there are also individuals. There are people who are sending us via social media, and especially me, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, some messages. Now they are not, they are a little bit more careful, because they know,
that you've been looking after. But you have quite an impact in your country, so to hear, in Europe and in the world. Tell us about it. What is the impact?
The impact is that from all over the world, really, from every country, we really can say from every country got messages that this is a mission, what we are doing there, and they are thankful for this. Because a lot of Muslim believers are happy that such a place opened as a place which is a voice for so many people who cannot use their voice. It's a place where we can be the lawyers for all those people. And they write us something like that they are scared in their own country. They are not living in a free country. So you, living in a free country, you have the responsibility to help us to change something in our Islamic community, congregation, and world. What does it mean? Does it mean that we wanna destroy or not accept conservative or traditional people? We just want to be a part of this congregation. We are not. We doesn't want. We are. We want that they accept the plurality in Islam. And this works really great. We have a lot of support from all over the world. Many people are coming from all over the world. So I invite all of you, please come and see that for your own. This is something different if you see that for your own, or if you just talk about that in theory. Just see the congregation, just see the people who are there.
But do you consider yourself as a change maker?
Not myself alone. This is what I want to say also. This mosque is not just me. I had the idea because I'm an activist, you know, I'm an activist from the 80s, I'm now 55, and I made so many activism in my political life, you know. Privacy is politics, so this is what I believe, and everybody who is not happy and has the idea to change something should do that. This is what I learned from all my teachers, female and male.
If you believe in something, do it.
Yes, I believe in something, just do it. Don't talk, do it. And when I started in 2009, I talked to so many people and do a lot of research. I'm also an author, as you know. Maybe I wrote already 6 books. And if you write books, so you read books. You have to read and you have to research. So that's what I did before I opened the mosque.
You did your research.
And I see that all over the world there are so many people who are change makers, who are changing a lot of things. There are so many role models, and there were so many role models for me. So I'm not the only one. There are hundreds and thousands of people, and that's the reason why I believe that our mosque is so important and it will be successful. So I did it. I made it.
Now while I'm talking to you, looking in your eyes, I remember that there was a documentary about you on the Dutch television as well. Do you remember it? I've seen it, That's true. Now I think, okay, that's right, I remember it. Tell us about the relationship between liberalism, feminism, Islam, and the context of Europe.
You know, a lot of people think Islam and feminism cannot come together. These are so opposite, it's impossible. But what I see and what is also reality in my life is I feel like a feminist. I am a feminist because I do that more than 30 years, very active, and I'm a feminist. But at the same time, I believe in God, and I was born in a Muslim family, so I'm a Muslim. Alhamdulillah. So I was many times in the situation that people ask me, why you say you are a Muslim? You cannot be a Muslim because you are a feminist. And I'm sorry, but I believe in God. This is maybe crazy for people who are not believing in God. We can talk about that, but I cannot prove where is God, what is God. This is a discussion about believing and not believing. It's a very philosophical and interesting discussion. We can do that. But nobody can say it's impossible to bring this together. Why? Because as a feminist, I always look to change the situation of women when it's bad. So I'm always looking where women are treated not equal. This is the point. And I can see that also in the religion. I can see that in a working place, and I can see that on the street, I can see that everywhere.
Do you want to say that this being an activist, being active for human rights, women's rights, has nothing to do with God?
Absolutely not. You know, this is why it should be. No, my answer is why it should be a reason not to be able to believe in God. It's not the opposite. Maybe because I believe in God, this is how
maybe
I am.
That's it. But I have to comfort you. We have great scientists who are very religious too.
Absolutely.
So
I was watching a very interesting documentary about 2 men, scientists, physicians, and they talk. One was believing in God and one not. So it's possible. Why not?
Yeah. And in the context of Europe, how do you see the relationship? How do they relate, and how do you see it? You know, what is the future of feminism connected to women's rights, Islam in Europe?
This is the point where I'm really sad about the debate and about the discussion. We are not in the point where we are going deep and be able to discuss differentiated. That's what my experience is. The discussion is much more on the Oberfläche. It's on the surface. the discussion ends at the point when we start discuss about the headscarf and about the free will. You know, then everything is killed. We cannot go further. My wish is that we start discuss about the issue of feminism in general, and what is the seed, what is the main point, equality all over the world, in all religions, in all traditions, in all cultures. So
And human rights.
and
as
in
well.
human rights
Yeah.
especially. So, and when it comes to women rights, we can see that all over the world, in all religions, we have the same problems. So in Europe, there's ein Knoten, how you say it? Knoten, there's
Not.
a knot. Yes, there's a knot where the feminists are not able to go further. The Christian women, the Jewish women, and the Muslim women, they are fighting the same fight. But actually, it's like that so many feminists trying to defend a very traditional Islam, and because they don't want to be called a racist, Islam enemies, and against foreigners, they are defending some Muslim or traditions in Islam which they don't accept in their own field. So we have a very crazy situation of cultural relativism and positive racism. This is what makes me really sad.
Yeah. And what do you think? What is the idea behind it?
The idea is not to be called as a racist
Okay.
and not to be called as an enemy of Islam. Islamophobia is a new, very modern word for that, describing sickness or illness, whatever. I'm against this word.
Okay.
They use this word, they bring this word in the discussion to kill the discussion.
Kill the discussion.
To kill the
So
discussion.
that is an
totally.
interest. An interest is to kill the discussion.
Yes.
But you've mentioned one of the heated words, the scarves.
Yeah. this
Okay,
is-
let's point out one specific issue. What do you think? What is your opinion, or maybe I don't like opinions these days so much. Well, maybe your observations or vision about covered women in professional careers.
No, there's a difference if you are representing the state or if you are in a privacy as an employer. But even in this field, everybody has the right to have his own philosophy for his union. And that's what the European courts decide. And as a representative of the states, you should be neutral. This is what we are doing in Berlin. We have a law for neutrality that teachers and judge and police men and women should not wear a headscarf or be covered. This is the point. This is what I'm defending for official places and for
Why is that?
represented to be neutral. Not
Neutral.
neutral.
Okay.
Neutrality is the main word.
But what do you think about other, let's say, Christians wear crosses?
The same in
And-
Germany.
yeah.
It's forbidden. In Berlin, it's forbidden to wear a cross and to wear a kippah.
Okay, so it's.
But even when I don't accept that they put this in the same level, because the headscarf has to do with the woman,
Yeah.
and the cross has to do with a whole congregation.
Yeah.
And this is really another very interesting and differentiated discussion, what we are not doing, because the discussion stops at this point. It is my free choice. I want to wear that, and if you are against that, you are not feminist. People call me not feminist because I'm against the headscarf on the head of a teacher. So that's enough for them to say she's not a feminist.
Okay.
Even of my more than 30-year history, what I'm doing for women, they decide, no, I'm not a feminist, and more headscarf women are feminists, more than
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But what?
I'm not scared about this discussion. I said, okay, if you don't call me feminist, then I call myself. I'm fighting for the right of this woman.
Okay, but what is a feminist in your idea?
The idea is to see where women are not treated equal like men. This is the main sentence. and where men and women are treated different because of their gender. And then I ask the believers, please look to the motivation, to look to the reason why a woman should be veiled. In our mosque we have women veiled and not veiled. By the way, this is very important to mention. In our every Friday Susie is calling for prayer, doing the azan with headscarf. You know, in our mosque there's no problem with the headscarf. And as I told you before we start, I think 2 or 3 days ago I was in a school in Germany and discussed with 16 till 18 years old students the discussion about democracy, what we should do. The headline of this event was democracy was killed, because between 20 and 30 students start discussing about the headscarf, and they read from the Koran why it's important, but they were not some of them were not wearing a headscarf, but they read all the surah and say, you have to wear that, absolutely. It's
no
a
question
rule,
about it.
it's no question about it. And then I asked one of the scholars, but you don't have, you read this surah, but you don't wear a headscarf. And she felt like beleidigt, offended. Yeah, she felt offended by me. She said, I'm sorry, you told me there's something written, absolutely, there's no discussion, but you are not wearing. And what I want to say is the discussion is not possible because it's really aggressive. It's not logical, it's about emotions, and it's not about the real reason why women should be veiled. The reason is that the sexuality of the man could be destroyed, whatever. And this is the next point, why men and people and women are not comfortable with our mosque. A young man stand up and say something what everybody who are against our mosque say is, I am a man, I'm a young man, I cannot concentrate in my religion when a woman is praying in front of me or nearby me, close to me. I cannot concentrate because I think about sexuality. Because of sexual feelings, I cannot concentrate. This is the sentence what we hear all the time, every day, against our mosque. So I give him an answer and ask him, said, why you cannot concentrate yourself just for the prayer and to God, even in a mosque when you see a woman. We should talk about this. Yes. We should talk about the relationship between man and woman and sexuality. That's why I wrote the book Islam Needs a Sexual Revolution. We should talk about the sexuality, education.
Or we should talk about the problems for men, not
see women as a sexual object.
Maybe we should talk about that.
That, and we should also talk about the women who are accepting this and defending this position. You know, this is what I want to talk about. And even at the end, when women say, I accept that for me, I wear that because I feel better to cover myself, not to be seen by all men. It's her right to do that. But if she do that, it's a signal. So it's a signal statement for the outside, and this statement should not be used by a state, a government, in a school. This is what I say.
Okay. So if we dropped it already, the state or the government. Tell us about your vision about the future of the Islam in your country, in Europe.
Turkey is a very sad example that political Islam takes place. Erdogan is using the religion for his political interests. This is now so open that nobody can deny that anymore. It was denied 10 years ago. 12 years ago, in the beginning of the 2000s, when I started saying that, people didn't accept. They say, no, he's not that religion, he's for democracy, he will change Turkey to a European country and make it possible to join to European Union. But I said, no, his fight for headscarf is a sign, the covering in schools and everywhere is a sign for a political Islam, as in Iran, as in the other countries, Islamic countries. And also using more and more religious words in his speech seemed that he's not willing to separate politics and religion. And so therefore we are in a very important challenge situation now in Europe, if the political Islam will win or if the religious people who are just interested be in spirituality and
and what do you observe? Because we cannot know, we cannot look in the future, but what do you feel?
It depends on the European governments. It depends on how European countries support the political Islam and how they support liberal, secular, conservative Islam, which is compatible with democracy.
And how can
if
we...
they will do, but nowadays, what I see is that in all these European countries, more and more a political Islam takes place because they bring a lot of money in these countries to build huge mosques, huge institutes, huge other places where they can teach their political Islam. But I'm very optimistic.
That's what I wanted to hear.
That's why I'm here. That's why I opened the mosque.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, we have to open a place where we can do the opposite work against this movement.
Okay, so we have to have a sort of opposition against what's happening in other places. If we stand up and join together. And I have one last question. So I have to finish. But one last question. Before, when I introduced myself, I told you that, of course, the discussion about Islam and things, it's happening for decades now. But there are also new European tribes, as I told you, people who look like me. And sometimes, sometimes I ask myself, how can we, as feminists, as black women or women of all kind of other, how do you call it, ethnicities, how can we support you in this?
I mean,
as feminists,
Europe should realize that we need a European politics. We need a union politics and a union fight against right. What happens now is that in every country they have the same problems, but nobody is looking through the border, just saying, oh, in our country it's different than in your country. I used to hear that everywhere. I go to Austria and talk about forced marriage in 2005 and 6. And they said, oh, poor Germans, it's so sad that you have forced marriage in your country. We don't have that in Austria. Oh, poor Germans, you have problems with integration. We don't have it here. And now they have more problems than we have it in Germany. It's the same here in Holland. For decades, they call Netherlands as the role model on the top for multicultural society. But under the surface, you had all these problems. They put us, Netherlands, every time on the table when we discuss in Germany about multicultural societies. They said, oh, we should do that like the Netherlands, like the Dutch. They are great role models. What I want to say is we have all these problems in all countries, and because the politicians and because the governments are not really interested in a good integration politics, I say that very directly. They are not interested in do a good integration policy. They give all the fields to the right wings. We as feminists, we as coming from the left, wherever, I'm coming from the left. I'm a house squatter. I did everything what people from the left did in the 80s, a demonstration against everything and for everything. So what we did in the 80s, we should maybe start again. Go on the street and fight for the right and show our faces and be...
enjoy the forces.
Enjoy the force, yes, enjoy.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Thank you for this interview. Questions?
So thank you so much for your insights, perspectives,
Thank
and
you,
also personal story. And thank you, Astrid, for the interview. Quickly, I'm going to give the floor to Renee. She would like to mention something.
Something I really feel bad about, because this event would not have been possible without the support of the municipality of Amsterdam, in particular Maria Quartas. So without further ado, many thanks for that.
Thank you. So I think it's time for the Q&A session and the discussion. Before we start, I would like to say that this event is also live streamed on the Facebook page of Atria. It will also be on the YouTube channel. And when I give you the floor, please mention your name and your profession so everybody gets a chance to know each other as well. And I'm going to be very strict about the mic. I'm going to hold it. And yeah, let's start. Who would like to...
Just a bracket, did you ask for visibility for the live stream? People who don't want to be on the...
if anyone has a problem with appearing on the live stream, feel free to say so we can take that into account.
We can take that into account. We know people can be taught.
Okay.
So we take that into account.
Okay. So who
So
can I give?
The persons who are involved, they don't say their names. That's and they have questions.
Okay. So it's already taken care of. Okay. Let's start. Who can I give the floor first? So,
I'm Berna Toprak. I work at Women Inc. I'm a researcher and I make programs. 2 questions. One, which Islamic story or perspective or quote has inspired or informed your feminism?
Oh, very good question. Which Islamic quote or story inspired your activities?
Hatija, the story of the biography of Hatija is one of the very important story for me, because she was an older woman than the Prophet, and she was a business lady. She was very important for the Muslim congregation in this time. Without her, the Muslim congregation wouldn't and couldn't grow. She was the very, very first feminist, and there are many other feminists, or we call them now feminists. There are other women, I would say women. In the beginning of the Islamic history, around the Prophet, and therefore we translate a book from Danish to German, Women from Medina, and you can find them in Islamic scientists, and if you research, you will find a lot of women names. They were practicing as imam, female imam, as authorities and fighters, even in the war. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so we are reading the Islam. Maybe the method is very important. We are reading the Quran and the Hadith, historical, critical. This is the method what we are following in our mosque. We are every time asking what was and is the deeper sense from every rule in the religious belief.
And the second question?
Thank you first. I'm also very inspired by Khadija and her story as well. I learned to reread her story from a more female perspective, which was empowering. My second question is, I understand from you that you believe kind of in neutrality possible in identity, as in someone's identity can be neutral, but for me as a veiled person, you as an unveiled person are not necessarily neutral. You also have a statement in your appearance, just like I have a statement in my appearance. So I was wondering, isn't it more important to have a conversation about, neutrality in conduct instead of neutrality in identity? Because especially as feminists, I think we should be very skeptical about the concept of neutrality.
Yeah. No, I don't agree. I don't agree, because if you are standing up, like as you did now, I think 99% people will see you are a Muslim woman and you are accepting a kind of wearing clothes. Not only your headscarf, also having a story behind your headscarf.
And what is that
When I
story?
stand up and people see me somewhere, everywhere, they cannot find out that I'm a Muslim directly. They cannot find out that I'm feminist and standing for something. So therefore, the discussion about neutrality is more difficult and more differentiated, as you mentioned, for me. Yeah.
I mean, so because your identity is not more visible, you should have more rights?
No.
Because I mean, if you...
No.
if you have other
No,
identities,
this is
then-
definitely not. What I say for the school is that the state should be as neutral as possible. That means if you put a teacher in front of a class, you should not represent and give a statement through this person. This is a neutrality, as much as we can. And this is also the neutrality what courts describe and law describes. Not
Okay.
only in Germany, as well for human
I
rights.
would like to go to
It's
another
a
question.
statement.
Does anyone want to give a remark, ask a question?
So I have a remark. So this for me to understand.
Your name and your
Oh, sorry.
profession.
My name is Fatima Elatik. My profession, no, I'm not. My profession, that's a good one. Maybe a know-it-all, and I like to interfere with everything and just discuss about stuff. If I understand correctly, this discussion about neutrality is about the optical neutrality, because that means that. So it's not real neutrality. We're talking about the visible things you can see. So instead of a teacher in front of a class, or maybe a police officer, just to say it, has to appear neutral on the outside, just by the clothes, the uniform, the things they wear. But it doesn't mean that the neutrality inside, and that's what we see. We have, last few years, a couple of incidents, people who look neutral, who are in the end right extremists or have very difficult ideas that they give our children in our school. So should we accept that the state demands neutrality in all these kinds of positions? Is that real or is that just fake?
Now the discussion is in the point what I mentioned. This is absolutely the position. We have 3 headscarf women, ladies, bringing this discussion in the point that we talk about the surface. And what I want to hear is why you are wearing the headscarf and why women should be covered, that men can be
That's not my reason.
different. I want to mention about that
Okay,
because
let's
you
just-
bring it to the level of neutrality. This is what we also mentioned, and the neutrality is described much more differentiated, and you throw the ball to me and say, you say you are a better neutral than me, and this is not, this question, this is it, and you smile like that. I know this face, that, this is, I know this is discussion. This is what I try to change. I want to discuss about the real story behind this covering. When little girls started to be covered, little girls in the age of 7, 8. This is a movement, This is a movement that I want to talk about. And the style, how you cover yourself, as I can see, will be not accepted by a lot of people because you show too much of your body. The other,
I agree with you 100%. Because if we talk about neutrality, we have to also, as Muslim women, be able to be honest with ourselves and have the real discussion about covering. And I agree with you. But that doesn't mean, because we need this discussion with our own communities, especially the women, because women need to be more empowered and know why they're covering themselves, and also understand the myth that brought them to cover themselves. So I agree with that. But that doesn't mean, on the other hand, because we are citizens in a democratic society in which we have equal rights, that the state
is going to interfere with the way society is organized, also and have all kinds of values attached to neutrality, because that's the discussion we need to have. So I agree with you. We should look at our own stuff and our own myths and our own movements, why we cover, why we do. And on the other side, I'm a citizen in this country. I was born and raised in this country. Nobody's going to tell me that I cannot do whatever I want to do, any job, because I don't look neutral. Who's the one who says what neutrality is?
Yeah. You cannot put every jobs in one place. This is it. You cannot put the job as a teacher and the policeman and the judge in the same level. Not everybody. It's not possible, because we have statements through your job. And now we can see, this is the discussion about. Finally, when we talk about Islam and feminism, we are talking about the headscarf and the covering, and the discussion is death.
Because
I feel like
those women feel very excluded.
Yes.
Because I wore a headscarf until I was 27 and I took it off.
Yeah.
So I started this Facebook page that was called I Took Off My Hijab, to make a statement within the Muslim society. And then also I got a lot of hate mails. I have them all in my archive for one day to publish. But what I want to say is this. It doesn't mean that the thing is, when you start the discussion on this way, there is a reason that the discussion stops at the hijab discussion. Yeah. There is a reason. This means something. This means that this discussion is not yet finished. And there are very important themes that we have to discuss on this point. The hijab is not only the hijab. The hijab is the way you were brought up, your identity, if you are excluded or included in the society that you participate in. And it's much more than only the hijab. So those are all the themes that we need to discuss before we start the discussion on is it neutral or not, how do you perceive me, how do I perceive you. I don't wear it anymore, and I don't believe I have to wear it. That's my thing. And I do, of course, if I see little girls who wear it, I have a hard time with it, but what made me decide that I didn't want to wear it anymore is that I didn't have people around me that were against it. If that would happen, I am sure I would still wear it today with much more conviction, maybe. So I don't believe that you will make a change if you discuss it in that sense, because it feels so excluding. It feels so excluding for those women.
And discussing again, the discussing and the debate is not about the motivation behind it. This is what
you don't have to have that motivation. You are not obliged to be motivated
women
with
as a sexual object.
But that's your motivation. I know a lot of women who just wear it because they like it.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
This is
maybe let's go to another question. Does anyone have another question?
I just want to add something. I was born in 1963. Maybe that helps to understand my position. I was born in 1963 in Istanbul. My mom came from Anatolia to Istanbul. She wore a headscarf. She came in 1968, sexual revolution to Germany. She took off her headscarf because she said, "No, I'm in Europe." And this time, in the 17th, I'm an eyewitness, I grew up with all the women coming from Turkey, Kurdish, Turkish, taking off their headscarf. In this time, I grew up in an atmosphere where in our school, the teacher said, "Now we start swim lessons." And the parents and all the streets where we lived and families we know, they decide if they buy, they just decide if they buy a bikini or a bath suit, those two types, because of the figure or what they prefer. Yeah. That was the discussion. Today we have a discussion about covering, not covering, lessons or not lessons, with boys or not with boys. I just want to explain where I'm coming from. I'm coming from this atmosphere. In our school, nobody was talking and discussing about fasting, about praying in the school time. When we are sitting in the school, we are discussing about the issues of the school. But nowadays, we have all over Europe schools where students are aggressively discussing about religion. This is what I'm scared about. This is what makes me sad about our societies,
more and more religion takes place in the life of little kids, beginning from the kindergarten. There are parents in Berlin. They're fighting for the right to cover their 2-year-old girl in the kindergarten. So I try to discuss this point, why Islam and our religion takes so much place now in European schools. I'm not talking about Netherlands and Germany only, Austria, France, everywhere. Why our kids, we are talking about kids, are aggressively attacking other kids not fasting in Ramadan. This is the issue of the Muslim community from Morocco till Indonesia. And all the other discussions about neutrality, my right, and racism, we are not able to come to this point to go shoulder and shoulder to fight against all the issues against the right wings. Because we are fighting and discussing if this 5-year-old girl is not allowed or allowed to go to the swim classes. And the teachers and the schools were closed in these discussions. I had what I told you 2 days ago. A group of 120 students was not able anymore to discuss about democracy. We want to discuss about democracy. What is democracy for you? The debate was killed by 20 to 30 students because they were so aggressive against our mosque that the boy stand up and said, it's not allowed that the man and the woman are praying together. It's not allowed to pray without headscarf, and you are not a Muslim. They killed the debate. A lot of people sitting there were not able to be loud or give their voice a place. They came after the debate to me. Mrs. Ateş, I like your work. It's great what you are doing there. Girls from Turkey coming to me, saying that, and Germans coming to me and saying that, I would love to hear more about your mosque and about your idea about dialogue. We cannot debate and discuss because we are not talking about this development. Why the situation in our classes all over Europe changed, that my religion takes so much place in primary school and kindergarten. This is what is scaring me. This is what Erdogan and people like him pushing and paying for. Again, in our mosque, we have women with headscarf and without headscarf. And we are not discussing about the headscarf in our mosque. I'm discussing about the political movement coming from DTIP, Turkey, paid by Turkey, Muslim Brotherhood, coming from Qatar, Wahhabis from Saudi Arabia. These are the movements. We are not debating and discussing about this aggressive political Islam movement because on the other side, the right wings are growing. Everybody is scared to be put in the same field. So we stuck somewhere, and even here now, this is what I say. This is the point. I ask back, tell me why in our schools kids are fighting a religious fight. Jihad in schools.
Yes.
This is what makes me scared.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here.
I only have a comment, not a question. I shouldn't be in the camera, okay? But my name is Umayma. I come from Egypt. I study in Al-Azhar, also in Al-Azhar University. I study Islamic and Arabic studies, so I'm a specialist in Arabic. I'm Muslim by how, but I'm working on human rights defenders. At the first, thank you for that inspiring interview, because there is a lot of things I should think about. That I'm really happy to hear it from other body. And also I wanted to add, it's about visibility. All speaking about hijab is about visibility, because it's not only hijab. It's not only a choice for the girls or for anybody. Maybe a lot of you know how it's working in Egypt. Maybe it's harder than happened in Turkish with Erdogan. It's harder there because the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, they have a big movement from 17th until now, and even they are removed from the politics now on the top, but they are working on the street, also Salafin. I think it's about visibility, because I think as a feminist, the equality between women and men, to let anybody to choose what the other can wear or can't wear. But in Islam, the man choose what women should wear, and it started from the hijab. So they are push the young girls to put it in the primary schools, even in kindergarten. So it's about visibility. So if you wanted to discuss this and going to a real discussion, so we should have an equal chance to do this, not about anything except no.
Thank you. Yeşim.
Dear Mrs. Ateş, Yeşim Candan, we just spoke in the beginning. And when you tell your mission, it's really a relief for me, because I think, wow, this is really something for me. And do you have a mission to open something in Holland or France or England? Because I think your mission is not only for Germany, I suppose.
Yeah. There are many plans, there are many ideas in the pipeline. We are going to work on an idea of an institute for liberal secular Islam in Germany first, in Berlin. Grow our mosque, because our congregation is growing, for the next building, and we are planning in Brussels, in Vienna, in Oslo, and also in Paris, helping people who are living there open a similar mosque. Yes.
So you're actually looking now for the second, third Seyran Ateş in Europe.
And I would love to clone. People love to clone me, myself. I would love to clone myself. So when I will able, we would have the first next mosque in London.
Oh, really?
There's a great big congregation who would like to have such a mosque there. They even give us some money and donate that to open it. So we are working on this idea anyway. But the problem is that people are afraid. They are scared. They are scared about doing that. A lot of people telling me, I would love to open a similar mosque here in my country, but I don't want to walk around with protection like you. I'm scared about my family situation. I'm scared about myself. I don't want to give up my privacy. It's a hard life, yes, sure. Since 12 years I'm together with all those policemen, and but what I can say, I'm every day thankful for that, every day. It's not, I don't see the negative side. It's not that it hindered my life. It's because possibility to live,
that's,
you know.
It's
a mission, and they give me the opportunity to do this kind of work. Otherwise I couldn't do that. That's what I try to explain people. You should be, you should decide for yourself that this is a mission and important. As a human rights fighter, it's always a mission. And then you should accept that, or understand that freedom of speech or freedom of religion, what I'm practicing, it's possible in democracy, with protected by police, by this democracy. And that the police is here is a proof of our real democracy. This government is protecting people for doing such a work. So we have to find people who do that in your country, and I'm looking for that.
Okay. Does anyone have a question? Renee, Astrid?
No, thank you, Muslim women, for being here and being part of your discussion. But what fascinates me is, what does it look like, neutral? Do I look neutral?
Right.
if people see me, they think it's neutral. This fascinates me in your discussion. Like, if people see me, is it?
You cannot change your color and your tent, but you can decide if you change your veil, your scarf for some hours. This is what some teachers do in German schools, that they don't wear the headscarf for 2 or 3 hours while they give lessons. And this is what the European Court also said for human rights. We have situations what you cannot change. You cannot change your gender, you cannot change your sexual identity, you cannot change your color. But when it comes to freedom of religion, it's not only to believe in God and to forbid that, to say the government has to be neutral, to forbid the headscarf in school doesn't mean your religion themselves is treated. It's just to show your religion is treated. And this is a different situation. And the teacher who wants to stay in front of a class should accept that you give a message. It's just be covered, give a message. You don't have to say anything. It's giving a message. This is what it's about. And with your color is absolutely something different. This is what is the multicultural society is about. There we can discuss another point.
Yes. Now, given the time, there are 3 more questions.
My name is Samira. Can you please tell us, because sometimes you say German and sometimes Germany, and sometimes you say Berlin. Is it forbidden in Berlin to teach? In Berlin, that's one. And you said also about children wearing a scarf. Is it in a primary school that it's that you want to forbid or not, like that children wear a scarf? And what is the age? Because I'm a mother too, and if my daughter is 6, and if I decide that maybe she's 8, then it's possible that she wears a scarf on primary school. I don't understand exactly. Can you tell me more about the freedom of religion, also for parents? And the difference between Berlin and Germany and high school and wearing a scarf, for example, as a teacher.
Yeah. We are living in a federal system in Germany. We have different states, so we have different laws. In Berlin, we have the neutrality law, and in other areas, we have different laws. So it's possible in some states of Germany to teach with headscarf, and in Berlin, not. This is a difference. This is the decision of of the area as well. You know, because every area is also in a different tradition. This is what the law says and decides. So this is different. And in Germany, in the age of 14, we think that you are able to sing about your religious beliefs, and you should be in this age able to decide if you want to be a part of the church or not. You can decide and say, I'm going out of the church in the age of 14. But we don't have that for Muslim kids. There's no law to decide in which age a little kid could or should be covered or practicing religion. This is what we are discussing now in Germany. There are some people who are fighting for a law that forbids headscarf in schools everywhere till the age of 18. So you are an adult and you are 18, so you are able to decide yourself. And yeah, there are other people who say 14 is a good age because we have that for the Christian people too and the Jewish. So this is it.
Okay, thank you. One more question.
I have a question, because what I find interesting about the second part of what you said earlier is about this political Islam movements that have been funded for many, many years, for the last 40 years, if I can remember correctly, from Saudi, from Turkey, from everywhere. Because I think that's the biggest danger for us in our Muslim communities in Europe, because they won't stimulate movement and new ideas. It's just, you know, sending out old habits and old ideas. I believe that mainly men in our communities who have been who've been leaders in our communities for the last 40 years are not a part of the solution. I still believe that women are a part of the solution to change the influence of these movements. But the interesting thing is, what kind of advice can you give women, especially Muslim women, because I do believe that the change has to come from us, because we have to be critical of all the myths that have been told to us for the last 40 years and that we've incorporated in our lives. Because I agree, young girls, 2 years old, 3 years old, wearing headscarves, girls not being able to take swimming lessons because there's a male teacher. I mean, these are things we have witnessed for the last 40 years, and it pisses me off. And what I would like to know is there, because starting a mosque is one thing, but most interesting is the movement of women. Is there a possibility to connect all these women's movements in Europe within the Muslim community? And what kind of advice do you give us women? Because not only are we Muslims, but we're also ethnically different. You have Moroccans, Egyptians, Turks, all different. But I think it's the time now to stand up as women. But we need some good advice. How do we make this movement of visible, but also strong? Because especially because we know you'll get threatened, you have to have male escorts, it's not easy, we know that, but what makes a movement like that strong, and what kind of advice do you give to especially Muslim women?
And how can we organize together?
Not to open a mosque, to
that's
start.
my answer.
No, to start the discussion within the communities, because that's where it starts.
I'm sorry, this is the answer.
To start a mosque.
Yes, you can only do a change inside the religion. And this is only possible with a mosque. Why people react so aggressively against our mosque? We opened the mosque on Friday, 16th of June. On Sunday, 2 days later, 5 men came like gladiators, to our mosque. 4 from DITIB, 1 from Milli Görüş. 2 days later, come to our mosque and say, close this place, this mosque, and don't call it mosque. This is the most great fear what they have, to have a place called mosque, people going there, practicing the religion, because they are enemies of freedom of religion. They are not accepting freedom of religion, and they are not accepting female authorities in our religion, veiled or not veiled. They are not accepting this. Therefore, all the unions, all the organizations, all the technical groups, all these others, they are just meetings and talking and whatever. Go and act. You have to change in the acting. And as an activist, I can tell you, you have to have a mosque where all the people come together. That's how it is in our place. We have people from Morocco to Indonesia in our mosque. Our common language is German. This is it, what we have to do.
Okay, thank you.
How do we react? Is it only
we have men and women. No.
Is it only men who go mad, or also women, Muslim women? Also women. Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, also women, especially. This is equal. In our house it's equal. And you need men, absolutely. You cannot do that only with women. You need men to do that together.
Okay, the last question of today.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Well, this shows that these kind of discussions need to be continued. I thought it was really intriguing to hear the debate about the neutrality concept, and I think part of what struck me is that maybe the frame of neutrality is creating an issue here, and maybe a problem, because in the bottom line, if you look at particularly the French discussions that have been going on about the laïcité, which is about separation of church and state. And I think that is the underlying argument that can be used for saying if you perform a public function, it is problematic if you wear any sign referring to any kind of religious affiliation, which is a different kind of argument and a different kind of frame, particularly from a human rights perspective, than framing it as neutral, because neutral is indeed there is a value attached to that. And someone who is not neutral is apparently considered to be, that is more of a problem. So I think part of the dialogue that might be made easier if we are very aware of how sensitive it is to use frames that have a value attached to it. And I think that brings me to my question to you also, because what I really appreciate is your efforts to link the issue to a human rights perspective. Now, I do agree that there are human rights at stake here. So from a human rights perspective, you can also ask the question, what is a government's responsibility to make sure that its citizens can enjoy their human rights? So my question to you is, if you look at it, you are also emphasizing the cross-border dimensions. It's happening all across Europe. What kind of support, given also the increasing support of the conservative Orthodox Islam, what you call the political Islam, what kind of support do you think is needed to foster a more liberal Islam that does justice, can do justice to human rights of women? And is there also a governmental responsibility here to foster those developments?
Not an easy question, the last question. You know, the governments should be in a distance to religion. That's what secular countries call it. In a healthy distance or close to religion. We don't have the separation like France, as you said, but we have laicism also in Turkey. We have it still, and the political Islam is growing. You know, this is not a guarantee. Not to mix politics and religion. This is one point. And in secular countries like your country also and our country, what means religion and politics is not clear divided. You know, there are influences from the church in our politics. We have that because of the system what we have. But still, finally, not a religious book should be the value of our laws. This is what at the end should be common in a country, that we are not following religious rules, we are following our human rights and constitutions, even when they are influenced by values coming from religious ideas. Finally, human rights are universal, and the universality of that human rights are universal is not accepted by the most Orthodox and fundamentalist Muslims. And there's a very important year for that, 1990. Please remember and read maybe about that. In 1990, 47 Islamic countries pronounced Islamic human rights. From this year beginning, there are some years, important years, 1979 in Iran and 1990 in Cairo Declaration. This year, Islamic countries pronounced the Islamic human rights and said the human rights from 1948 are not accepted by us. And they start this gap between Western world and Islamic world. And this is the real issue, what we have to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Given the time, it's time to wrap up because we are getting a little late. Thank you for the very interesting Q&A session and the discussion. It was very nice to have a small role in this event. Thank you, Seyran Ateş.
Thank you, everybody.
And I would like to give the floor to Renee now.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And vielen Dank, Zehra Ateş. I think there is a small gesture to be made. I'm looking at Jules. For Sarah, it's a modest gesture, but from the heart.
Thank you.
Aus ganzem Herzen.
Dankeschön.
Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank.
There is a group picture, a request for a group picture to be made. So if all of you would be so kind to come forward, and we can. Is that okay for the photographer? Because we might have difficult light, or should we stand there?
Fine.
Is it fine?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And thanks to Astrid Elburg. Please give a hand to Astrid. I think did an excellent job improvising. I mean, with a short on such a